Hurricane Sandy is permanently costing New York City up to $200 million a day. The city's comptroller, John Liu, also says economic activity is down 20% since Sandy struck the financial capital. Welcome, John. Now, put the $200 million into perspective for us. What share of that daily economic activity does that amount to, and how much do you expect to permanently lose for the city in total?
Well, that's a great question people have been asking. The city generates about close to $2 billion a day in economic activity, and we're down to about 20% of that level of activity. It'll be at least a few more days before we get up to normal levels. You know, we still have to get the power up and running. We have to get the buses and subways, mass transit up and running also. So until we get to that point, we'll still be facing loss of economic activity. But that economic activity is not necessarily lost forever, because transactions and purchases that don't take place this week, in most cases, will be done next week or a few weeks from now when everything gets back to normal. So we're looking at permanent losses of about 10 to 20% of what the normal volume would be. So that puts us at around $100 to $200 million a day in permanently lost economic activity.
All right, meaning that if we're, perhaps by Saturday things will be back to normal if you expect about $1 billion lost?
Well, things will be back to normal eventually. We're hoping that by Saturday all the electricity will be back up and running. That's what Con Edison, our utility, has announced just today. Mass transit is probably not going to be fully up and running by Saturday, but hopefully within the next few days. The low point was on Monday, where we saw only about 20% of our regular volume of economic activity. Since then, it's been inching upwards. Today, we're now Thursday. It's no longer at 20%. It's much higher because some of the buses are running and people are back on their feet. But it'll slowly get up there. So at the end of the day, we imagine, we expect that there will not be losses, economic losses, totaling over $1 billion.
Although right now, I guess we've got a lot of gas stations running out of gas. What about the tax revenues? How much does the city stand to lose in tax revenues overall?
So each day in lost economic activity is worth several million dollars a day in tax revenues for the city of New York. And when it comes to those permanent losses, that's money that the city will unlikely recoup in the long run. On top of that, we have spent about $30 million of unexpected expenditures due to Sandy. And so it starts to pile up. At the end of the day, we probably will face a total fiscal bill for the city of New York in the tens of millions of dollars. And of course, there will be expenditures on the part of state and, most importantly, federal government, where we're certainly counting on reimbursements from the federal government for long-term damages to the city.
And how much do you expect to get back from the federal government in terms of to cover
well,
those costs?
That's a great question. That's the big question on people's mind right now. The governor is fighting for 100% reimbursement. Normal guidelines are 75% of approved projects. I expect that at the end of the day, we will receive reimbursements in the billions of dollars. Add to that the insurance claims that will undoubtedly also be in the billions of dollars. At the months, perhaps a year from now, the city could face an infusion of several $billion of construction and related money.
The federal government money, if it does come in, or whatever does come in, John, do you have to pay that back, or does that come in the form of grants?
Most of that would be in the form of grants, or specifically reimbursements. So in some cases, the city would have to pay out the money in advance, but then get reimbursed by the federal government. Hopefully, as much as possible.
What about the city's credit rating, John? Will the storm hurt the city's credit rating, or at least the ability of the city to borrow?
I don't think it'll impair our ability to borrow or hurt our rating. On average, every year we borrow $12 to $15 billion of debt. Some of it used to refinance outstanding debt to lower interest rates. We've got an ambitious capital program that is already factored into our long-term budgeting process. The rating agencies are very well aware of that, and we still maintain very high ratings by all three agencies.
You said earlier you expect a lot of things to sort of start to return back to normal starting this weekend. What about with the New York City Marathon expected to still take place on Sunday? Are you confident our infrastructure is ready to welcome all those visitors and hold that race?
As a New Yorker, and as someone who has run in the marathon, I think we'll be ready. Sunday is still a full 3 days away, and a lot can happen in 3 days. I think we'll be ready as long as the infrastructure and the personnel is available to keep everybody safe, both runners and the general public. Then I think the marathon should proceed, and I'm optimistic that we have that capability. It's a big economic generator. We kind of lost out on the big Halloween parade yesterday, which is a big event in New York City as well.
That's postponed, right?
Yes, hopefully that will take place sometime next week. So it's not fully postponed, although, you know, having a Halloween parade in the first week of November is not quite the same as on October 31st. But I think we'll recoup some of that with regard to the Halloween parade, and I'm optimistic that the New York City Marathon will proceed.
Now, Governor Cuomo, John, has talked about, raised the idea about possibly building a levee to, prevent these sort of things from happening. Is that idea feasible?
I think we have to start looking at it. The governor is on the right track. This is a storm that people have said for many years, specifically since Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, that New York City was prone to such a superstorm. And in fact, it has hit. So we have to look at weigh our damages against the cost of building such a levee system. And obviously the city is continuing to grow. We expect 1 million more people in the city of New York over the next 20 years. So the infrastructure has to be built up, and the levee system is something that needs to be analyzed in a very thoughtful way.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us, John.
Great to see you, Fred.
Our thanks to New York City Comptroller John Liu. I'm Fred Katayama. This is Reuters.